Sew with Monty. Today I'm going to show you how to take the one-piece skirt pattern and turn it into a skort so that you have an inseam. So I'm going to go ahead and take this off the form and show you how you start with your measurements. Now the measurements I'm about to take on the form, you can also do it on a person. The first measurement you want to get off of your form is your total rise measurement from center back to center front waist, center back to center front. So I'm going to take my tape measure and I'm going to go through the stride and I'm going to hold the tape measure at the center back and I'm going to hold it right against the body, and this is 26.5 is what my stride is on this. But I really want 27.5 because I need a little ease in here. So a minimum of 1 inch ease. So we'll start with 27.5. That's going to be my total stride. The next measurement I want to get is how long I want my skort to be. And originally I measured down 14 inches as my finished measurement. So it is kind of mid-thigh, sort of like a long short leg. The last measurement you need is your crotch depth. Now that measurement is going to be from your waist to the seat of the body. Now if you're doing this on a human, you may want to have them sit in a chair so that you can measure from where they're sitting up to the waist and find the crotch depth. My form has a pretty clean line there, so I can measure it without doing that. So my crotch depth here is 10 inches to the base of the crotch. So 10 here, 14 here, and then 27.5 total rise. So let's go back to the table and I'll show you how to take these measurements and create the pattern to make the skort. So what I've done is I've taken my skirt block and I've traced it off on another piece of paper. Now I've made 2 of these so that I have a front and back. And my trace off is here, and the center front line here represents where the fold was. Then I've shortened it to be the length that I need it to be, which would be 14 inches from the waistline. Remember, these lines right here represent the waist. The next thing I've done from here down to here is my 10.5 inch rise measurement, my crotch depth measurement here. So the next part of this is going to be, I've extended a line a 1/2 inch below the crotch depth out through here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to develop a curve in this area, and then from this curve I'm going to calculate what I need in my rise. So we're going to call this the front and the other side will be the back. Now I've taken the rise measurement, 27.5, and I've divided it in 2, which is 13.75. Now I want the back rise to be 1 inch longer than the front rise, so I've taken 13.75 and minus a 1/2 inch. That makes the front 13.25, and then I've added 1 inch to the back, which makes it 14.25. So there's 1 inch difference between the back and the front. That's the total rise measurement. Okay, so the next part of this is we're going to come right in here and try to do this at a 45-degree angle from this corner, this lower corner. And I'm going to develop a 1 inch line here, just like that. And I want to come in here and I want to curve this so that I'm going about 3 inches above this point here and coming out and hitting the baseline here somewhere between 2 and 4 inches here with a curve. So let me get my curve. Now I call these little marks fences so they keep me in the right place, because I don't want to start way up here and try to do a curve. The main thing that's going to govern this is these 2 lines and this point right here. I want to touch all 3 at the same time. So if I'm touching all 3 at the same time, I'm probably going to get the curve that I need to establish. Just keep this about 1 inch. Now for your smaller sizes you may want to go 3/4, but right now 1 inch is going to do the trick on this. So once I have this, then I'm going to come back in here and I'm going to measure from the waist and try to find my front measurement, which should be 13.25. So let me get my ruler here. I'm going to start with a 1 at the natural waistline. Now remember, we have no seam allowance here. We want to work with just the real seams. No seam allowance. So right here is 13.25. Right there. So that's going to be my inseam. So I come straight down here. Now remember, this is a little different than a regular pant. So you're going to have more fullness in this than you would a regular pant. It wouldn't be this abrupt if you're making a regular short, but this is a skort, so we need the fullness. So this is the finished measurement, except for a 1/2 inch seam allowance and a 1/2 inch seam allowance here for my front. I've already gotten that, so I'm just going to check that off, and then I'm going to do the same thing on the back. So let's turn it over and I'll show you the back. Okay, so I have the front done. Now I'm going to do the back. So I've developed the same thing. I took my inch fence line, and that's my turning point on my curve of my rise. I know I need to be roughly somewhere about 3 inches up on the back rise here so I don't get it too arced. And then I just want to gradually touch both of these lines in a smooth transition. Now once I have the line drawn, I'm going to go for my natural waist, which is this upper line right here, and I'm going to measure this time 14.25, which is the back rise. So I'll put the 1 right here, and having a flexible ruler is really helpful in a situation like this so that you can bend it around and find where you need to be. Now if you need to stop and release it, that's perfectly fine. Sometimes it's hard to hold trying to bend it all at once. So my back rise is coming to right here. And I'm just going to square off. I want this line square as I do my hemline. I want both of these to be square here. And now I've created the pattern. All I have to do now is add my seam allowance to the rise and the center back and center front and the hemline on both of these, and I have my pattern. Okay, now I've already done this, so I want to show you what it looks like and all the markings. So I've added the seam allowance to this pattern. It has the grain line in the proper place. It should be parallel to the center back seam in the rise area. And then I put my information, how many I'm going to cut. This is the front skort because the rise is shorter. The rise to crotch width right here is shorter than it is on the back. So this has all of its seam allowance on, and this is actually what I used to cut the little green short I showed you at the beginning of the video. I put a single notch right here. That represents that this is the front rise and tells me when I'm sewing it that this is the front rise. Now on the back I've done the same thing. There's a 1/2 inch seam allowance on the hem, 1/2 inch seam allowance in the rise, and in the inseam. This was already here, 1/2 inch seam allowance from my original skirt. Again, my grain line is parallel to center back. I'm cutting 2 of these. Make sure you have the cut amount on here. The size, and then the pattern identity. Is it back or front or whatever. Now in the back rise, I've got 2 notches spaced about 3/8 inch apart. This signals that this is the back. This symbol right here, 2 notches about 3/8 inch apart, always tells you that, hey, you're working on the back. So this pattern is cut out and it's ready to sew up. So there you have it, a cute little skort.